exercise can be the place or a place where you start to challenge some of those beliefs that can then trickle out into the rest of your life.
It's about helping people come home to themselves. And that feels like a perfect conversation for JOY².
And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well now you need to be like worried about your longevity and mortality and disease risk and all this stuff. And it's fear on this side and fear on this side. And where's the place where I actually get to enjoy myself?
Many of us have complicated relationships with our bodies. Welcome to JOY², Live with Joy. This is the podcast where we get to explore the power of joy, purpose, passion, and fun, and how joy, when practiced intentionally, transforms how we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, Greg D. Coker, and I believe that when you live with joy, everything gets better, and I mean everything. And this isn't just about feeling good. It's about unlocking joy as a resource, one that fuels better leadership, meaningful work, and thriving lives. Each week, we share the stories, the insights, and the sparks that ignite more joy, because joy is contagious, it's powerful, and it belongs to all of us. So lean in, stay curious, and let's create more joy together. This is JOY², brought to you by Essentia Group. Welcome to JOY², Live with Joy, the podcast where we explore how the hidden power of joy can transform the way we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, Greg D. Coker, and each week I have conversations with inspiring leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and change makers who are helping people create more joy in their lives and in the world around them. Today's guest, Martha Munroe, is someone who is helping people reconnect with something many of us have complicated relationships with, our bodies. Martha is the author of Attuned Exercise, Reclaiming Movement from Shame, Hustle, and Perfectionism, and Building a Deeper, More Sustainable Relationship with Your Body. She brings together more than 20 years of experience in the fitness industry with a master's degree in applied psychology and applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. Her research on embodiment and well-being has been published in peer-reviewed journals, and she has supported hundreds of people in transforming their relationship with movement, exercise, and themselves. Through her work, Martha challenges many of the stories we've been told about fitness, willpower, discipline, and worthiness, helping people move away from self-criticism and toward trust, curiosity, compassion, and connection. And before we jump in, I want to give a special shout out to our mutual friend, magician, and keynote speaker, Dan Trometer. Dan introduced Martha and me because he saw something we both care deeply about, helping people experience more joy in their lives. And after getting to know Martha, I can honestly say that she embodies joy, and not in a loud or performative way, but in the way she shows up and what she believes and how she speaks about people and in the difference she's making in the world. What I love the most about her work isn't really about exercise. It's about helping people come home to themselves. And that feels like a perfect conversation for JOY². So Martha, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I've been looking forward to our intro conversation. So yay. Well, we'll dive in. So I know how busy you are kind of with your, with everything you're building in your work and your life. So just what made you say yes to joining this conversation?
I think anything that is about bringing a different way to think about the relationships we have with the things that are important to us is a good
Mm.
conversation to have. And that's what I love about your ethos and what you're bringing to the world is the idea that like we can bring joy into our relationship with the work that we do. We can bring joy into the way that we lead. In my book, when I'm talking about exercise, the idea that joy is a legitimate goal and that positive emotions aren't just fluffy and nice to have. They're
Mhm.
really a start point for more curiosity, creativity, and creation of like the good work that we want to do in the world. So, yeah, that's
I
why this
love
was a no-brainer.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, no, so having you said yes, I figured you would because we're both aligned on. And I know even when we first had that first Zoom call, I mean, just the way you show up, it's like you're beaming. There's already joy. It's already joy. There's joy in the room. You're not waiting. Well, let's see what Greg's like. Let's see if, we're aligned. Let's see if we have any synergies. Let's see where the conversation takes us. We're not waiting to see if it's going to be joyful. We're bringing it. Yeah, I love how you say, yeah, bring it. It's like, yeah, bring it. Bring it, lead with it, be intentional with it. We don't have to wait for it. I think a lot of us do. So yeah, really great to have you here. Yay.
Yay. It's awesome. And anyone that Dan recommends that he thinks would be a good fit, I'm like, done, because
Oh,
he's a great guy I've known for a long
me
time.
too. Me too. He and I went, just real quickly on Dan, he and I were walking down the ravine a couple weeks ago, and we bumped into a friend of mine, and I introduced Dan as a magician and excuse me, and a keynote speaker, and Dan said, "Well, I have a magic trick. Do you want to see magic?" My friend was like, "Oh my God, I love magic." So right then and there, shows us this magic trick. We're like inches away from what he's doing. We still talk about it. We still can't believe it. I was like, "How does that even happen?" Because we're
That's
right there.
awesome.
There's no sleeves or anything. So anyway, yeah, it's talking about bringing joy. That's something Dan definitely does, and he does well for sure. So thanks, Dan, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Yay! And what does joy mean to you right now in your life?
That's a good question. I think joy to me is a lot related to authenticity
Mhm.
and really listening to what you actually want to do and how you want to show up in the world. And the idea that like authenticity or the authentic self isn't this thing that you uncover or find and that like exists somewhere, non-abstractly, but it's something that
Mhm.
you cultivate by being able to connect to your own inner wisdom and what's aligned to you. And I think that like
Mhm.
that connects to this idea of attunement that I talk a lot about, in the book, obviously in relationship to exercise, but it's
Mhm.
beyond that. And so when you're living in attunement to yourself and not culturally handed down scripts of how you quote unquote should do things, whether in
Right.
in life or career or business, life
Mhm.
gets more joyful and following the things that you enjoy helps you always have a lot of motivation because it's inherently engaging to do that. And so for me, joy could be spending time with I have a young daughter, spending time with my daughter and our family. And, slowing down to that pace of kids is just so joyful, getting to see the world through their eyes.
Mhm.
Joy is getting to feel physically good and capable in my body. I talk about, my own journey with exercise, and having gone through a period of time where I was recovering from a concussion and I couldn't do a lot of exercise. And now
No.
I'm in a place where I've built it back and it feels amazing to me that I can do things that I can do now. That feels super
Mm.
joyful.
I love
Things
that.
like dancing, making music, spending time with
Mm.
people and, like, having great conversations with people, those are all things that bring a lot of joy to my
I love
life.
that. It seems to be a consistent theme with pretty much all my guests is that joy isn't like that huge goal necessarily. It's not about achieving that. It's about the little things along the way. And not that there isn't any joy out of achieving huge goals, of course, but people talk about the small things and really appreciating those little things, those moments, where you're connecting with your kids and, connecting with nature, connecting with your bodies. And I haven't heard too many guests talk about exercise being joy, but I think a lot of people that I've spoken to are very consistent in their exercise. But I didn't go down that path of asking them specific questions. But I'd love to kind of ask you, how does exercise and movement kind of contribute to joy in your own life?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always noticed that I feel better in my life when I'm physically active in some way. So I remember feeling like when I was in university and and you're studying and you're in the books and you're in your head all the time, right? Really really overemphasizing the cognitive side of yourself that exercise was so regulating to kind of bring myself back into the body a little bit and
Right.
kind of get grounded and get present
Mm,
and not only be living your life from the shoulders up, like
yeah.
getting back into the body. And I think that that's where, a lot of our emotions live, including joy, because joy isn't a cognitive state. It's like a whole body physiological thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's a huge part of it. I think for
Mm,
a lot of people, exercise can be in this dynamic where there is, a lot of shame or guilt around it because if they haven't been able to make it a part of their life, and that like we have a lot of societal messaging about exercise and moralization of it, and that
mhm.
there's like a very specific way that it should be done in a certain ethos and a certain purpose. And for some people, that sucks the joy right out of it, right? If you're
Yeah.
supposed to do something that you hate, that is
Mhm.
about objectifying yourself and punishing your body for what you ate
Mhm.
or whatever, like there's no room for joy there at
No,
all.
it's like joy killers. I mean, it's like, yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, and so I think that piece is about reclaiming movement as something that can be joyful and an expression of yourself, and that isn't about like, forcing yourself to do something that you hate, but that could be doing more of the things that you love to do that make you feel more energized, that make you feel more alive, that make you feel more present in your body and
Mm.
yourself. And then that kind of radiates outward to the rest of your life.
I love all of that, and I was just thinking about how I had a relationship with my body that was better, probably when I was in my 20s and 30s and than my relationship with it now, and because I looked at exercise as my reward for working hard that day, and I had it framed so well. It seems so distant and so weird now because not that I don't try to have fun with it by running in the ravine or the stairs or whatever, but I just haven't been consistent with it, and it does feel I have it as a should. I have it as like I need to take better care of my body, and I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking that, but I think going from thinking that to translating that into how can I make it a more of a positive journey or experience or thought process so it doesn't feel so heavy. Because I
Yeah.
literally think I feel like literally
You're
heavy
like,
in my body now.
yeah.
Yeah, right. I feel heavy in my body now, and I also it feels heavy emotionally too and mentally. Like I'd love for you to talk about that coming home to yourself idea. I think there's something really special in that, like, what do you mean by that? I'd love for you to unpack that because I think it sounds like maybe that could help me kinda reframe my current,
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
run exercise, yeah.
For sure. I mean, and first to sort of name that dynamic that you're describing, right? Of
Yeah,
the like the exercise as something that I should do as
right.
opposed to exercise as something that I get to do. Right.
Yeah,
And that's such
right.
a
Wow.
helpful cognitive reframe, but it doesn't necessarily, if you just change the words of like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, it's not something I should do, it's something I get to do, it doesn't automatically change how you relate to it and where
right.
it's fitting in your life and what kind of some of those pieces of your whole life are right
Mhm.
now in this chapter that you're in, right? So when you look at that time in your life when things were ticking over really well and it felt like this reward to get to show up and do the exercise and feel really good, I'm going to bet a little bit that your life was structured a little differently than it is now.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit more spaciousness for
Mm,
something that is just joyful and pleasant. When our life is in a chapter where there's a lot more going on, maybe it's
mm.
parenting, maybe it's a particular career stage or a life transition or whatever, and we're trying to stuff something into the margins,
Right.
it's probably not gonna feel very
Mm,
good because
mhm,
instead of having this expansive period of time where you get to go and do something enjoyable, even
mm,
if it's something that is enjoyable and feels good while you're doing it, you're still stuffing it into a fairly full slot. And
mhm,
so a good place to start is to acknowledge the reality of this chapter of life and not hold it as a measuring stick to that previous chapter where life was totally different. And so we don't get to have that chapter
You're right.
anymore. We had that. It was
Yes.
wonderful. It was
Yeah.
like, and so many people have you know, those glory days stories,
Yes.
right? And I did
Yeah.
too, before I had my daughter, I was on a weightlifting team where we trained 2 hours every night, so 5 to 6 days a week. That's like that doesn't
Mm.
exist in my life right now, right? Like
Right.
that's not realistic. But if that's my only
Mhm.
version of exercise that I'm holding up as my gold standard, then I'm kind of
Yeah.
setting myself up for failure or for feeling that whatever I'm doing right now is less than.
Right.
So being
Okay,
super,
and they say just on that actually, it just popped in my head. They often say comparison is the thief of joy. And often when I've heard that is when we're comparing ourselves to others, which I think is one thing we do a lot, but also comparing ourselves to a past, like a decade ago or, an earlier, time in our lives, right? Comparing that too is also the thief of joy because things are different. You're right. Okay, that's cool. I hadn't really connected that
yeah,
that
and
way.
it's such a thing that I see a lot in the conversations that I have with people about exercise is actually that the comparison with other versions of ourselves
Yeah.
is even harder, right? Especially if we
Yeah.
used to be
Right.
very athletic, or that weight didn't feel heavy before, or oh my gosh, this is only a 5K and I used to do marathons, and you know,
Right.
whatever that source of comparison is.
I'm speed walking now, and I used to be able to run.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, or
And
whatever,
and
yeah.
that's really hard, and what we're seeing is only that one area of life. We're seeing that, okay, I'm not doing as much as I was then exercise-wise,
Right,
but we're
right.
not also comparing, okay, all of these other areas of my life that are different too. And so having a whole heaping helping of self-compassion for the fact that, of course, your exercise life doesn't look the same as it did in your 20s and 30s because your
Yeah.
life doesn't look like what it did in your 20s and 30s. And
Mm,
so that's okay. And it's okay to feel a little bit of that nostalgia or even a little bit of grief might come up for the fact
yeah.
that, oh, I used to be able to do that and it felt so good and I loved what that was. And right now that doesn't fit me, and being able
Mm,
to tolerate a little bit of that and explore what's realistic right now, what feels good for me right now, what's going to make me look forward to it and not feel like ugh, right? Like I use when we talk
yeah.
about like that feeling of ugh.
Yeah,
I
right.
talk a little bit about
Like when
like
we're shitting on ourselves. We talk about, like,
shooting
when
on
we're
ourselves. Yeah,
studying ourselves or
exactly.
others, for that matter, right. It's such a great
I
expression.
love it, I love it. And this idea that when we're more generous with our definition of
Mm.
exercise
Ooh,
and
that.
more generous with giving ourselves the W that like I did it and it counts and it
Yeah,
matters
right.
and that was important,
Yeah.
the easier we have it to be consistent over a long period of time and maintain a positive relationship with the thing over time. Because
Mm.
if we're pushing ourselves to do something we're not enjoying and that is uncomfortable or forcing it into a life where it doesn't fit, our resistance to it's going to increase. And then it's going to require more motivation every time. So when you can adapt to make it easier to tick it off the list or to give yourself, an easier goal, it can feel a little bit at first like you're kind of letting yourself off the hook. Like I know this is important to me. I know it makes me feel good.
Right.
I know X, Y, and Z. Like there's nobody who doesn't know that exercise is good for them. But when we give ourselves a nice on-ramp, or if you're in a period of life where things are just busy and stressful or whatever, that you give yourself, okay, we're in maintenance mode now. We're just going to do that little bit and focus on stuff that feels good and allows me
Mhm.
to keep showing up, then you have a relationship with movement that's worth coming back to.
When you're building that too, and you're also it's like the way you talked about it, we're closing the knowing doing gap because of course we know it's good for us. I know that. But
Yeah.
then how do I translate that into the morning where I'm like, oh, today's a good morning to go. No, I've waited too long. I don't have time. It's a big production. I kind of go from the wanting to do it to then coming up with excuses why not. And I think for me, one of the things I've realized is I will think of it as an idea, a good idea versus a commitment to myself. Like I'll dupe myself, like in that the night before, okay, I'm definitely going for a run. And then that morning where I just, I'm tired. Maybe I woke up late. I feel like I'm already behind the eight ball. And all now I don't have time. Right. So it's like, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but I didn't actually make a commitment to myself. Right? So I let myself off the hook, which then doesn't help with my confidence. It doesn't help with me getting in, better shape and exercising in some way or movement in some way, right? So,
Yeah, and I think a little bit of flexibility in situations like that can be super helpful. It's like, we've
yeah.
all had times where, you set the alarm clock early to go for a run and then you're like, yeah, no, thank you. And like, so first off, normalize that. Everybody
Right,
does that. It
right.
happens, right?
Mhm,
And if you're slow getting up and getting out and you're like, okay, I don't have time for the hour-long workout that I had planned, be like, okay, well, I do have time for 30 minutes, or I have time
right.
for a 10-minute around the block, or I have time to do, 5 minutes of a little bit of some stretching and core exercises on the floor or whatever. So
Mhm,
adapting to how you're feeling as opposed to just eliminating it. So this
mhm.
idea that like if you can't do your first favorite thing, that's
Yes.
don't throw it all away.
Right.
And
Okay, got it.
if you wake up and you're like, I literally don't have the energy right now to kick my butt and go do a 10-kilometer run, make it easier. And this is like along that ethos of being more generous with it
Hmm.
and attuning to how you actually feel in that moment. And that's sort of that process of coming home to yourself that
Okay, got it.
actually paying attention to how you feel and
Right.
that if how you feel is, the hour-long workout is not feel good to me right now, then
Yeah.
make it smaller, make it easier. What like when I work with people coaching, when we start to set the first like intentions of what it's gonna work we're gonna work on, it's
Right.
always so small that
Mm,
people are like, "Really? That's it? That's all we're gonna
yeah.
do?" And it's like,
Right.
yeah, you have to set the goal so easy that it
Yeah.
basically feels like it's already done.
You know,
And that's the thing that you build
yeah.
from, you
You
know?
build that momentum, you build your confidence, you're building your muscles in a way that works for you. It's like I remember reading something that said one of the simplest and easiest ways to build your self-confidence is to do what you say you're gonna do. So for me, if I say the night before I'm gonna go for a run and then I wake up in the morning, I don't go for a run, that isn't really that's not really helpful. I like you of it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and I'm a recovering perfectionist, so there's some different ways I need to definitely reframe that, and just those little things, like, if I say I'm gonna do this, walk around the block once a day. Like, I had a friend, the other day who was like, "Do you drive everywhere?" And I was like, "Yeah, often." And he goes, "I walk everywhere." And he's like, "I just invite you to kinda start walking more." So, it's just him saying that, not in a judgy way or whatever, but just in a he's like, "I know you wanna, exercise more. So just start walking more, build that in, when I go over to his house, which is like a few blocks away, maybe I don't drive my car, right? That's not that far.
Yeah,
Build in
yeah.
an extra 15 minutes of walk time, right? Because it's healthy and it's fresh air and it's just I'm doing something versus nothing.
Totally, and I think this idea of choosing the low-hanging fruit or whatever feels like
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit for you, whether, walking to your friend's house that's a couple blocks away, if when you do that, you really pay attention to how you
Uh-huh.
feel in that moment, because sure, we can think long-term fitness, if I'm walking, all these little extra bits for 20 years, that's gonna be good for my cardiovascular health, but that's fairly abstract. You're not creating a positive feedback loop in real time that's
Yeah.
going to make you feel like, oh, this is worth my while. And so we'll always have those moments where like, okay, I'm running a few minutes late, I'm just going to jump in the car.
Oh,
So
no.
when you are a little bit intentional about paying attention and noticing how you feel when you do that, to be like, oh yeah, it's
Mm.
actually super nice to get out here and I can like feel the sun on my skin and I can feel the breeze
Reminders.
and I can hear the birds and like, oh, this is nice. And my neighborhood's cute. Or, noticing like, oh, look at what flowers are in bloom right now. And just
Right.
pay attention to
Mm.
what it feels like to walk that little bit. Then I think the benefits
Appreciate
that
it.
that
Yeah.
we appreciate it, we kind of
Yeah.
savor that moment of being in between, or you're not here and you're not there yet, and you're talk about stacking in all your well-being interventions. You're getting fresh air, you're increasing your
Yes.
heart rate, you're looking around, you're being present in your body, all of that stuff.
It's like habit stacking. I've been referring to those kind of things versus multitasking, which I think is, well, for me anyway, I think it's an impossibility multitasking. I think that just doesn't work. But habit stacking seems a little more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just noticing those things, right? Because those things are happening. Like, I mean, you could walk that far, same distance, but have kind of like your blinders on and listening to,
Right.
heavy metal music and kind of dissociating from it, and have a totally different experience than kind of choosing to be a little bit more, nothing against listening to heavy metal music if that's your jam, but you know, choosing to be present in that experience can help you be like, "Oh, it actually feels so nice to walk to my friend's house." That the next time it's no longer a willpower exercise to do that. It's, "Oh, that's gonna be so nice to just, get up from my desk, stretch my legs, have that few minutes of sunshine and
Yeah.
movement."
Is that like leaving ourselves breadcrumbs? Like when we're really present, we're really savoring the moment. And I sometimes think like I need to leave myself like loaves of bread. The breadcrumbs I'm not noticing, where I'm not paying attention to, or I'm ignoring, full transparency. But like, what are those other things? Like, I love your idea of really getting present to it because I think that will make it easier the next time because we're thinking about the pleasure and we're not thinking about the pain. Like I just had a conversation in my last episode where this guy Joey Klein is amazing. We talked about love-based emotions and fear-based emotions, and usually when we're experiencing something fear-based, it's out of lack. We're thinking about something that's not there. Whereas, what about focusing on something that is there, or something that is going to help us make that decision to walk to, in my case, my friend's house the next time versus drive because it's more convenient, or I'm feeling tired or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
But
that that's totally applicable. Like, I think so many people, the younger chapter of their life might be focusing or have been told, okay, exercise is about like looking hot or like looking a certain way and
right.
trying to achieve this physique, which like
Yeah.
whether or not it actually does that is questionable. But this
Right.
idea of like you're doing it to kind of manipulate your body. And so that takes us outside of ourselves, but that's really motivated by fear and wanting to belong and wanting to be loved and wanting to be
Mm.
accepted by other people.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now you need to be like worried about your longevity and mortality and disease risk and all this stuff. And it's fear on this side and fear on
Yeah.
this side. And
Right.
where's the place where I actually get to enjoy myself?
Oh my god, it's a fierce sandwich is what you're talking about.
Fear
How do
sandwich.
we not eat a fierce sandwich every
Totally,
day?
and especially for women, I see it so clearly, like, this whole idea of, like, women being sold exercise for, like, weight control
Right.
and to be
Yeah.
as small and palatable as possible, which
Right.
exercise doesn't actually do that,
Right.
but that's the way that it's marketed in this, like, high intensity, no pain, no gain, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, especially all the menopause space right now is like, "Oh, you gotta build your old lady bones, you gotta have muscle, otherwise you're gonna have a fall injury." And
Mm.
we're really, really pushed to like fear over here.
Yeah.
And there's no version that's about being present in your actual life and being present in your actual
Mm.
body, and that your body isn't just a thing that you have and this
Right.
object to either perfect over here or to take on as a project over here, but really is your vessel to inhabit through your life as your subjective experience in the world,
Mm.
to zoom all the way out, right? But this idea that like we can attune to and pay attention to and value what our experience is in the moment, and that has inherent value.
I love how you, because you talk about reclaiming movement from like shame, hustle, and perfectionism. Like, why do you think so many of us have learned to approach kind of like exercise from those places?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of if you look at the way that we learn about exercise in our bodies through the lifespan. So a lot of my like research work is mostly looking at women's experiences, but we can kind of look at men's experiences as well. And,
Mm,
and people who are outside the gender binary too, it's even more
right.
challenging because you're navigating an even more difficult experience of having a body in the world.
For sure.
But we
Yeah.
learn all of these messages about what it means to be a body and have a body when we're kids, right? Or, you see your own kids when they're little and when you were little, movement is just how you exist in the world, and you climb on things and you grab
Mhm,
things and you
mhm.
taste things and you go out and you explore and you do and you dance unselfconsciously and you try stuff and you don't worry that you fall down. You go out and your body just is you in the
Yeah,
world.
right. There's no separation
There's
back
no
then, or is there?
separation. There's no
Right.
separation. And then we're gradually kind of taught, okay, you need to kind of control the body.
Yeah.
Don't eat too much, and you have to exercise. And it's not just playing on the playground. It's this
Right.
thing over here in the
Right.
gym or whatever. And the way that
Reps and it's weights and it's different machines or it's different dumbbells, whatever it might be, but yeah, it's a whole routine.
it's a whole thing, and I think
Yeah.
for a lot of people, kind of through the young years, it's funny. I was thinking about this just the other day. Is that like I was not an athletic kid at all. Like I wasn't on
Right.
any sports teams. I wouldn't have been picked for any sports team. I was like
Hey, you're being too hard on yourself. This is
picking.
Joy Squared. Bounce
No,
back up.
it's okay because it's honest. I was
Okay,
picking
alright, fair enough.
dandelions in the outfield, and that's fine, right?
Mhm.
But I'm a fairly active, athletic adult. And one of the reasons why is that you don't have to be any good at anything to do things as an adult. But
Yeah,
as a
right.
young person, as a youth, you're
Yeah.
not going to get selected for teams, or you're not going to even
Mm,
try out if you don't think that you have a chance. And this idea that like maintaining involvement in physical activity requires you to be good at it,
right.
and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, but now we got to exercise, guys.
Yeah,
There's sort of this interruption that happens where you're either kind of good at it or not, and kind of both paths lead to some disrupted places. So people
right,
either believe that they're not good at
right.
physical activity,
Yeah.
and then it's a challenge from that side, or their sense of like self-worth and self-efficacy is very much
Mm,
tied to what their performance is. And so the idea of, movement for self-care and enjoyment also feels a little bit out there. So
even
I think
further away, right?
even further away
Yeah,
potentially, right? And
yeah,
so all of that gets kind of wrapped in, and all of these experiences that we have that are embodied. So our relationship with food and appetite, our relationship with using our voice and expression and agency,
right.
authenticity,
Yeah,
taking up space with our full true self, our relationship to gender norms, our sense of our body as a subjective place as opposed to like an object for other people to judge. All of
right.
these components are
Yeah.
part of our embodied experience, and they're all kind of connected. So we're all
Mm,
just trying to figure out how to be in the world. And for most of us, there's been various disruptions along our relationship to our body that we kind of need to make sense of. What is this physiological component of ourselves?
yeah, right. It's like, and the way you talk about embody too, it's like all those experiences and judgments and thoughts and conversations and perspectives, like we're storing all that in our body. It's probably, doing a number on our nervous system as well,
Oh, for
too, right?
sure. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, and you spoke earlier about, it's like, oh, there's this perfectionism side or guilt side.
Yeah.
It's, those are the dynamics that I see. If you struggle with
Yeah.
perfectionism anywhere in your life, it's going to show
Yeah.
up in your relationship with exercise. If you struggle with
Right.
a lot of guilt dynamic or shame dynamic, that's going to be showing up in exercise. If you are like a high achiever, gotta be, top of the heap, and that's going to show up in exercise too. So a lot of the sort of developmental themes of your life, or the things that you're working through in your own personal development journey, those are probably
Mm,
present in your relationship with exercise too, or struggling with self-compassion, etc., which is
right.
kind of interesting. and I talk a little bit about this in the book, this idea that like exercise can be the place or a place where you start to challenge some of those beliefs that can then trickle out
Mm.
into the rest of your life. And
Yeah, like
that's
how we do
super
one thing is
interesting.
how we do everything is something I've heard before. And again, generally speaking, but again, if we're doing that, and well, like you said, if it's, if we're wired for shame or guilt or perfectionism, often that shows up in other areas, maybe every area. But this is a great way to really focus on how we're being, because I think everything we do comes from how we're being. Like I think that's the heart of everything, and what we're doing impacts what we're having in our lives. So I think it's a great place to start. Do you think these things are these blocks, I guess if we call them blocks, these things that are blocking joy as it relates to like our bodies and movement and self-image? Like, we have these blocks that we've kind of grown up with in different ways. And then what would you suggest? Like, how do we move through those blocks? I know you've kind of mentioned, some ideas, but like what could be like a practical first step for from
Yeah,
I'm asking for myself and anyone else out there that may be
absolutely.
struggling.
So I think
Sure.
that the first port of call is self-compassion, and all of those things that we might have learned, whether it's perfectionism or, guilt or being really hard on ourselves, like inner critic wise, we
Yeah.
learned that with a positive intent. We learned that because we were trying to figure out our way in a difficult world. And
Okay.
the problem is not you.
Yeah.
The problem is that you were taught something that either was incorrect or wasn't the whole picture. And so that can really change the way that we relate to things. When we think like, I suck because I can't get it together with exercise versus the way
Right.
that you were taught to exercise doesn't
Yeah.
feel good, isn't sustainable, and makes
Yeah.
us feel worse about ourselves. We
Wow.
can, instead of sending hatred and judgment at ourselves, we
Yeah.
can send it at the system that harmed us, right? When we learn perfectionism, it's
Mm.
not because usually not because somebody directly told you, "You gotta be perfect."
Right. Yeah,
It's
right.
it's tacit, right?
Yeah.
We learn that, okay, this is valued. When I try to get
Mm.
everything just right, that's beneficial in my relationships and things around me. And be
Could
like,
be
"Okay,
protecting ourselves often, right? Because then there's no room for judgment, like a
exactly."
yeah.
Yeah, and so there was a positive reason
Mhm.
why that was learned. And you
Right.
can have so much compassion for young Greg. And imagine young Greg, right?
Yeah.
When did I start feeling like I'm a less worthy human being if I don't exercise? And it's like,
Right.
woof, that
Yeah.
sucks. And if you have kids, you can imagine if your kid comes to you and says, "Man, I feel like if I don't exercise, I'm a loser." And how much like love and support you would send them to be like,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not the
beautiful.
case at all. And you can
Mhm.
send that to your young self and be like, that's not the case at all. This is a pathway to something totally different. And that's where I really strongly feel that, when we can't just take the quote unquote negative or self-critical thought and replace it with a better one and then
Yeah.
like ta-da, we actually, to heal it, you have
Mm.
to send that self-compassion and that self-love to the part of yourself or the young version of yourself that thought that that was true, that thought,
Mhm.
"I've gotta be fit and active and have a six pack to be loved," or
Right.
or whatever, "I've gotta run, you know, 40 miles a week to be a worthwhile guy," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever those sticky beliefs are, or that it's gotta be no pain, no gain, or it's all or
Mm.
nothing, or I've gotta prove to myself that I want it bad enough, or whatever those beliefs are that are getting us stuck in a dynamic that doesn't feel good. And self-compassion is the way through in my experience.
I love all this, and it's definitely helping me to rethink, because I haven't been working out lately, and I can't use the weather as an excuse anymore, right? It's gorgeous out, like, so that excuse is gone. So, what's my next one? And I think now looking for my next one, but just making it easy and making it fun. And what would you say to someone who's kind of feels like they've failed repeatedly when it comes to, like, exercise, health, and just taking care of themselves, and I'm and I'm asking for me, but I mean, in case anyone else can relate, but yeah, like, what would you say specifically? I know this self-compassion, but for me, it's like, what does that even sound like in my head?
Yeah, I
You
would
know?
say you're not alone. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
your fault. There's a
Hmm.
lot going on in your life that is maybe making it more difficult in this chapter. And just
Yeah.
because
Um,
there's been times where you've started things and it hasn't been able to continue, doesn't mean that those experiences were not worthwhile. And that exercise and movement and yourself as a body is a lifelong journey. It's not about getting it right once and for all. It's about having a lifelong relationship with your physical self that can ebb and flow, and that it's totally normal and really to be expected that there's going to be chapters in life where
right.
exercise is not happening, either
Mhm.
because life gets too busy, there's other priorities, or, you know, interruptions and life being lifey is real. And
Yes.
you're not a failure because of it. And so
Mm,
many people, if they're on a lull with exercise, feel
yeah,
like, well, this is me once and for all. Whereas if you actually drew
right.
the line of your life with movement, you'll see that there's been lots of ups and lots of downs. And
Uh-huh.
that's just part of this beautiful lifelong journey. And that movement is always there. And that if there isn't room for it in your life right now, there just isn't room in your life for it right now. And
Right.
but it is there whenever you're ready to extend that invitation and explore
Mhm.
doing it again, and maybe explore doing it differently, and
Yeah.
explore maybe with a new ethos. Sometimes we have to kind of clear out some of those old beliefs, shake out some of those narratives that maybe aren't fitting us anymore in this chapter of life, and kind of clear out the closet
Mhm.
of yeah, declutter our
And
beliefs about movement and ourselves,
yeah,
and make some space for what this next chapter could be like.
it's when you first started saying that, I mean, it was like it kind of felt a little emotional because it's like I'm relating to myself, like, and it's like, wow, okay, just, being, feeling seen and heard and valued and just, what you shared. And it's like, why do I continue to make it so hard on myself? Like, I keep saying, how do I reverse the trend? I look like I'm melting now? Like all the inner critic and the really negative stuff as opposed to no, and then I feel guilty. I'm like, I'm the host, founder of JOY², right? And again, not that I'm trying to, show that I'm perfect. I'm clearly not. This is why I designed this podcast, to help others, including me.
I think that you're really kind of hitting the nail on the head a little
Mhm.
bit of a dynamic that I frequently see, which is people who are super smart, people who are super capable, people who are super successful in other areas of their life, who haven't figured out the exercise thing, and then
Yeah,
kind of have a lot of shame about that. That
yeah,
just like, man, like it seems like I've got it together over here and over there, and then I can't even get myself to the to the gym or to the run,
right.
or whatever it is. But really that's globalizing about one small area of life, right? And
Yeah,
that's the whole goal, is that we shouldn't be spending all of our energy on our relationship with exercise, but it's worthwhile to spend a little bit of energy for some time to, get into that groove of it so that it can kind of tick over a little bit more on its own when it's a little bit more sustainable. But you've got to give yourself that soft re-entry point, right? When we come
yeah,
in with that
I
ethos
love that.
of,
Man,
like, being super hard on ourselves, or like, oh man, I'm such a success over here and I'm really not over here, and we kind of feel
yeah.
that almost embarrassment about it
Imposter
for some.
syndrome kind of can leak into other areas of our lives too, right? I feel like it's fake, like compartmentalization, which doesn't really
Yeah.
work.
And it's like, Greg, you're a human being, right?
Mm,
If you and I like, for self-compassion, if you were to talk to a friend who is
yeah,
like,
right.
a friend who you can see they're doing all this cool stuff in the world. They're like really on their own path for like a life of meaning and purpose for them.
Mhm.
And they're like, man, I'm
Mhm.
just feeling so bad about myself. I used to be able to run marathons, and now I
Yeah.
can barely kick my butt out the door to go around the block, you'd be like, it's all right, man. You know,
Right.
you wouldn't lose respect for a friend
Yeah,
who
that's
was
true.
struggling with it. You'd be like, it's all right. You'll get it back. Just,
Meet them where they're at, meet them where they're at and just how it's like, "What do you want? How can I support you in getting it?" I've always asked those 2 questions, right? Whether it's exercise or anything in
yeah.
life.
And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what you can start to ask yourself. Where do
Mhm.
I want to go and how do I support myself to get there?
Yeah. And what would be fun? I think the question I don't ask myself a lot is because again, I have it wired as I've got to be doing like the stairs 10 reps, like up and down 10 times. And now I'm like in my head, I'm like, God, can I even do 10 right now? Right.
Yeah.
It's been a winter of not exercising and eating and and drinking and not taking great care of myself. So it's like then there's that. And it's like, well, maybe that's fine. And maybe the first time I go out, maybe it's just 5. Maybe it's not trying to, kill myself by doing 10 or more. It's just to get out in nature and just to start breathing and just to sweat again and just to enjoy it. But what else feels good? Like I feel when I'm at the cottage, like I like to swim, but I don't often go and swim. I like to paddleboard. I don't often do that. I like to canoe. And those are things that, are kind of like habit stacking out in nature, on the water, in the water, doing some things that are where there's movement that are fun but it's like whether it's self-sabotage or I'm starving myself or it's an all or nothing, well, why would I do that if I'm not doing anything else? But just getting out of that yeah, I guess I keep thinking I'm a recovering perfectionist, but maybe I still have some work to do.
You're like,
I'm
oops,
still recovering
everywhere I
maybe.
go, there I
Oh, yeah,
am.
yeah, everywhere I go, there I am. Yeah, the recovering perfectionist.
But
Yeah,
that's real, right? And
yeah.
we do sort of, have those beliefs that are like,
Mhm.
okay, going up and down the stairs 10 times, that counts. And that is a
Right,
real quote unquote, real workout.
right.
Going out in my kayak for 45 minutes just to go and take a look at the lake, that
Yeah,
doesn't count. And we're not putting that in the
right,
bucket. And then like,
right.
okay, and if I decide to go to the stairs and I can only do 3 times without feeling like I'm sucking wind, then that doesn't count and I'm a loser and I can't cut it and like you know, those are the type of beliefs that
Mhm,
we're trying to excavate and be like, okay,
mhm.
that's gold because we found a belief is I got to do the stairs and it's got to be 10
Yeah,
times. And I'm not
right.
being inclusive of these other physical activities, the canoeing, the kayaking, the gardening, the dancing around your kitchen, the like, those other types of movement or walking to your friend's house that we too often don't consider as counting, is that we're going to be more generous with that. And in the structured exercise, whether it's strength training or going for the run or going to do the stairs, can we be a little bit more flexible there? I've found both from myself and with clients that I work with in coaching is that when we're more flexible, we feel like that's the letting ourselves off the hook and we start counting all this stuff. We count all of the stuff, we get as flexible as we can, and that's what allows us to be more consistent and to start to feel good about what we're doing. Like if you go out tomorrow and
Before
force yourself to run up those stairs 10 times, you're
yeah.
going to feel like a bag of crap. Like it will not feel good.
Right. Part of me wants to commit to doing that. Literally, I'm like, "Wow, what's holding me back?" Why don't I like or even this afternoon, but yeah, so what would be a different way to reframe it? Like instead of me saying, I'm doing 10, up and down, which may hurt, like what's a
Yeah.
better way for me to think about it?
Yeah, and then that was kind of what was bubbling for me. It would be like,
Yeah.
okay, my challenge to you would be to go out and
Yeah.
start and notice what
Yeah.
does a 6 or 7 out of 10 effort feel like?
Right.
Because
Okay.
you can push yourself to 10 out of 10. You know that if
Right.
you really want to, you can push yourself and you can force yourself to do that. But that's
Mhm.
not what we're exploring. We're exploring that space of what moderate intensity actually feels like.
Mm.
And you don't know and I don't know what that number is going to be. It's going to be I'm going to do it once and then I'm going to let myself breathe and I'm going to see how I feel and be like, do I want to do it again or do I not? And if you
Right.
want to do it again and it still feels less than 7 out of 10, okay, let's do it again. And just notice what that type of effort and so being able to notice what intensity of effort that you're bringing as opposed
Right.
to an external yardstick of, 10 reps or,
Yeah.
3 sets
Okay.
of 5 in the gym or whatever, what does it feel like to auto regulate
Right.
and adjust based on how you feel in the actual moment?
We do. Maybe it's just push-ups in the morning. Like, what would actually feel good? I think that's a question I need to ask myself more. Like, what would feel good? Like going to the gym, and doing some curls, or, doing some different, exercises, the machine, whatever that might be. Is it talking to a personal trainer? Like, or is there some things that really feel good? I think that's what I need to be really, as opposed to just making it so hard on myself to just get there, wherever there is, the gym, the
Yeah.
ravine, the stairs. Yeah.
Totally. And I often think about this idea that like if you look at your movement life as a whole, it should only be a
Mhm.
very small percentage that feels like it's taking the medicine, right? Most of it should be what
Right.
feels like yum, like I'm excited,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
maybe, for me, that's going for walks or hikes with friends or, going and trying something new like, rock climbing or paddleboarding or going and doing new fun stuff that's not a quote unquote workout.
Or hip hop dance. Actually, a friend of mine just did hip hop, and he learned how to do that. And I was like, yeah, there's some exercise there, but it's also there's some humility and some fun and making fun of yourself and just kind of putting yourself out there. So I kind of encapsulate in the socialization and working with the team and choreography. So I was like, on one hand, I was like, I don't know if that's on one hand, I love the idea. On the other hand, it scares the hell out of me. So
Yeah.
maybe that's my answer right there is to
Maybe
look
that's a
into
fun one, right? Yeah, a dance
yeah.
class, right? And
Yeah.
try out a beginner class, right? Where it's all
Right,
going to
just to
be
see.
beginners too. Nobody's taking themselves too seriously. Everybody feels like they're a little bit like ooh about being there, right? And getting
Right.
over that self cringe factor. Who knows? Maybe this time next year you're going to be, a hip hop dance
Oh
star,
my god.
you don't know. And
Yeah.
this
Who
idea.
knows? Maybe there's something in there that wants out.
Totally. And this idea of having a chapter, like I talked about
Yeah.
that in the book, this idea of having a chapter where you're just exploring different things and being
Mhm.
really curious about movement because I really disagree with the idea that you have to find the one thing that you like to do and then do that
Yeah.
forever. I think it's
Right.
really normal to have chapters where you're into different things. Like I had a chapter where I was really into hip hop dance and that was great.
Oh, no way.
And
Yeah,
I had a
well, so
chapter, where I did triathlons and marathons and like distance running. And then I had a
wow.
chapter where I did weightlifting. And then I had a
Mm.
chapter where I was like, oh, I'm really into this whole idea of like natural movement and these kind of flow workouts and stuff. And, in
Yeah.
this chapter, I like kind of more traditional strength training again. That's
Experiment. Ooh,
being
yeah.
good. And the idea that like it's totally normal for your hobbies and interests to have different chapters. And that if
Mhm.
I remember for me, after I had been doing running and kind of distance stuff for a long time, and I just felt like I didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And I was kind of like, for a while, I was like, well, like now what?
Yeah,
And
right.
like you can if you decide that the thing you've been doing isn't fit you anymore, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or that you're lacking in willpower. Maybe it's just time to
Mhm.
try something different. So the
Yeah,
idea
that's
of
right.
like keeping some curiosity in there and yeah, jump into the hip hop class or
Mhm.
explore, once a week I'm going to meet a friend for a walk or yeah, I'm going to try something that I've never done before or invite
Right.
in some of those stuff that like I already know that I like but I haven't been making a priority and that it's for the kayaking or the paddleboarding or the other outdoor activities, it's for joy
Mhm.
and it counts as
Yeah.
exercise. It's all in there.
Well, Martha, this has been amazing. And before we wrap up, I just thought, hey, is there anything you want to kind of share with the listeners? Like, what do you hope they take away, or how do you hope kind of our listeners feel after listening to this?
I'd like to share that if anybody listening feels like they've struggled with exercise and that they're a
Mhm.
failure or that they're behind or that, they're never going to get it together around exercise, that there is hope, that
Hmm.
there's a different pathway than what, the fitness industry wants to hand to you that is like this all or nothing, no pain, no gain, you know, really high intensity and unenjoyable path. There's a
Mm,
whole other world out there, and that there's hope, and that it can be
yeah.
joyful, it can be embodying, and it can have a positive spillover into the rest of your life when you
Mm,
practice being generous, when you practice self compassion, when you
yeah.
practice being mindful and attuned to your body, it can really positively impact your whole life.
Mm. Well, I love that. Well, Martha, like, thank you so much for being here. I mean, this conversation's flown by. I can't believe, we're at like it's coming up, looks like to an hour. It's just amazing. It's so easy to connect with you. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed tapping into kind of your wisdom and your energy. And what I appreciate most about, your work is that you're helping people rewrite one of the most important relationships like they'll ever have. It's a relationship with themselves. Right? That's kinda one of the big things I got out of it, and be more compassionate and be more generous. You said that, quite a few times. I feel like I'm very generous, a generous person, and how generous am I to myself? So it's something that I'm gonna invite myself to think about and also invite our listeners to. So, yeah, in a world that often tells us to push harder, do more, and become someone different before we're worthy, your message is a refreshing reminder that healing, growth, and well-being begin with acceptance, curiosity, and connection. So I love that you're helping people see movement not as punishment or performance, but as an opportunity to reconnect with themselves in a deeper and more meaningful way. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for the wisdom you've shared today. And for helping people experience like more compassion, more generosity, more freedom, more and ultimately more joy in their lives because there's no such thing as too much joy.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg, and thanks for sharing your
Mm,
experience and some of your current struggles too. I think that's going to be
mm,
relatable for so many people because this is this relationship with our body. Like you said, this is from
yeah.
our first breath to our last breath. Your body is you.
I love that. And Martha, I'm going to put in your contact information and even a link to your book, which I've started reading. I haven't read the whole thing. I will finish reading it. I love the beginning of it. So it's something that I can definitely relate to. And it's something that just makes everything that you've shared today just more, even more accessible. The way that you talk about it, I think makes exercise and movement more accessible and more enjoyable. And it kind of has painted a different path for me. So I'm really going to rethink it. Yeah, and I'm look forward to our next conversation when I can share more with you. And all of our listeners, thanks for spending part of your day with us, right? We know you have lots of choices on how to spend your time and energy, and we're grateful that you've chosen us to spend some of your time, here. And here are a few takeaways from today's conversation. So, your body's not a problem to solve; it's a relationship to nurture. Joy often grows when we replace judgment with curiosity, criticism with compassion, and force with trust. So, and perhaps most importantly, lasting change doesn't come from fighting ourselves, it comes from reconnecting with ourselves. So, this week, I invite you to take one intentional action, move your body in a way that brings you joy. Not because you have to, not because you should, but because you can. And because joy is isn't something you earn after becoming someone else. It's something you can experience right here, right now. So until next time, live, work, and lead with more joy intentionally. Cheers. Thanks for spending this time with us on Joy Squared, where joy multiplies and everything gets better. Remember, joy isn't just something you feel, it's something you create and it's something you pass on. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it because joy is contagious. What we're building here is bigger than a podcast, it's a reminder and a movement that how we live, work, and lead truly matters. Until next time, live with joy, lead with purpose, and never forget to have fun. Keep choosing joy squared. And if you're enjoying the journey, we'd be grateful if you subscribe, like, and share Joy Squared so the ripple keeps spreading.